I'm getting few and far between with these videos, and I know I should be keeping up with them, but I haven't. Oh well, that's okay. I decided to do a video today, and that's what I'm gonna do. Sometimes, I guess for those of you who follow Spiralvent, you'll see that I make these comments on these articles that I dig up or I find from various sources, and the comments are usually really short, but I've heard some people say they sound like quotes, or they sound like like self-contained little sentences with bits of knowledge in there, almost like quotes. I've never really felt that way, specifically speaking, about quotes or the way my writing comes off, those comments on those articles come off, because every time I've written them, they always feel incomplete. They always feel like there's more stuff that could be said, like tons and tons more, just so you know. So I always think at the end of writing a quote, I'm like, yeah, you know what, that would make a great video. That would make a great video to just kind of elaborate on them. But I find myself making videos too, and they always only end up being 5 minutes. I think, well, longer video next time or something like that. But today it's merely operational. It's just a matter of making a video and getting one out there, because I just haven't made one in a while, and I feel like I say that with every one of these videos I make lately, or the last few I made. So what's there to talk about? I guess the first thing that came to mind was basically I was told on a couple of occasions, in various ways, right? You never really want to give people away on this stuff, but I was told that on the subject of atheism, you might want to consider moving to the center. I don't know what my political leaning is. I've been listening to a little bit of talk about political leaning from different people in terms of where you situate yourself, considering that the left and the right are both kind of sort of dabbling in each other's business. Then there's the whole rise of identity politics and the everything that entails, and then looking into issues of basically things like collectivism and then individual rights, things like free speech, and even including some bits and pieces about feminism and basically the various narratives around feminism, victimhood, or don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that feminism is victimhood, but I'm finding that there's certain narratives that do play themselves out, whether they're true or not, but they're kind of stuck in people's heads, and they get these preset preset sort of sets of behaviors that they function and rally around, and sometimes those behaviors may be positive. I'm not saying everything is negative, but in a lot of cases those presets, those sets of behaviors become kind of negative, because they tend to weigh down the possibility of reacting differently or reacting in a more positive way to various things that can happen within different constructs, like feminism, or like the liberal left, or like the alt-right, to just name another one, or all these different groups. So somebody told me, I don't think I even got to the comment, but somebody told me that, yeah, well, they said I should move to the center, and I think just to wrap up, I think there's the whole idea of atheism having this political side to it, and for the purist, I mean, atheism would be without any sort of political affiliation. But we don't live in a perfect world, and we don't live in absolutes. So essentially, what you would deal with is, if somebody's an atheist, in almost every case, you would have some sort of even if it's mild, and if you don't consider yourself way political, you would have some sort of political leaning. Like you would at least be, this is me kind of being personal on this side too, but you would at least be secular. You would have some sort of you know, at least I would think, you would have some sort of secular outlook on the way government should be run. And I know secularism, when it was first kind of, came about, it was more of a protection for various religious groups, as opposed to, keeping them out or stifling out religious opinion or religious whatever it is. It was definitely a way of maintaining the safeties around people having different religious beliefs. Nowadays, I think secularism is much more of an atheistic thing. We've been down this road before where people think about religion as, kind of fading and kind of, taking a step back, or kind of going back into the woodwork almost. But there's definitely this idea that secularism is more of an atheistic thing. I could be wrong. I don't have my litmus test correct yet, but it definitely seems to be, the way of any rational person would want to go. Secularism. That's the way it would be. But when it but going back to the whole atheistic thing, and there is a distinction, I guess. You would think that you can't really be centered on atheism. You can be agnostic, obviously, but that's something different. But if you were atheist, you can't really be moderately atheist. I'm sure you could creatively come up with some definition for something like that, but there's no moderate side of atheism in terms of, because that would just be agnosticism, I think, but that's kind of getting wordy and playful on words, etc., etc. Anyway, if I haven't bored you yet, wait till the next topic. I saw this article in the Jamaica Gleaner, and it's an article by this guy. His name's Ewan James. So I don't want this to be like it's the first time I've ever posted something from a Caribbean island on Spiralvent, and mostly I deal with a lot of atheist issues that come from Europe, the United States, and Canada. Even if they're not specifically atheists, they kind of dabble in atheism, but they might be related to religion somehow, or secularism, etc., etc. So the reason I posted it too was I don't usually look up atheism in the Caribbean. There was a video I posted about atheism in Trinidad, not atheism, about terrorism in Trinidad, but that had nothing to do with atheism, and it was written by it was actually written by a U.S. magazine, The Atlantic, I think. So that was kind of by the way, and it was more of a look at the rate of terrorist converts in Trinidad when it came to ISIS and other terrorist groups, whatever. But this one was interesting because it was an article from a Jamaican newspaper, a Caribbean newspaper, written by a person from the Caribbean, I think. And so it was just the first thing that popped up when I typed in atheism in Google and looked at the news, the news listings. That's the first article that showed up, and it was written today too. So I just posted it just because it was the arguments were very similar to a lot of the arguments you hear coming from people in the United States in terms of about how people talk about atheism. It's been an issue for me. I often wonder about my style of writing and like how I come across on Spiralvent. I'm not a writer, but I try to keep it very formal. I try to keep it respectful, and there are tons of jokes, but I don't post a ton of jokes. Maybe occasionally I post a meme or something that's funny, but usually style is very important. But this guy's kind of attacking atheism on the style side. He's kind of saying that, well, the way to see through the veneer of style is by looking at somebody who's less capable of talking about atheism, and then you see the holes in the argument. So I'm not saying that's representative of Jamaicans or representative of people in the Caribbean or representative of the way all religious people think or representative of, but it was funny, that argument, right? The way in which people talk about atheism. And you know, I've even seen memes where people say things like, "Oh, well, you just pretend to be atheist so you can be smart, or you're included in some sort of smart crowd." I find some of these things really low, like really, really low. Well, not really, really low. I mean, you could get really, really low, but like they come off as just really low and kind of stunted, retarded sort of arguments for atheism or against atheism. I'm not saying my style is the best or I've got the style thing down, but I mean, considering who this guy's referring to in terms of, you know, philosophers and even theologians who debate atheists, and I'm talking about past philosophers and modern contemporary philosophers who talk about atheism, and much more. You know, I really don't think that body of work, and considering how multitudinous that body of work is, or the discussions and discourse around atheism, how in-depth and how I'd say rigorous and very deeply felt some of these arguments are, I wouldn't call that style. I wouldn't say that's a style of talking. I mean, I definitely wouldn't say it's a vernacular. I mean, it's, you know, and there's different ways people talk about about atheism. You know, there's, like I just mentioned, a few, right? I mean, there's basically Facebook posts, like these short comments. There's essays, long papers, books, magazines, Facebook groups, memes, etc., etc. So it's fairly large amount of information out there in all different forms. So for somebody to say that the style in which atheism is discussed is kind of, you know, misleading, is very strange. But it is an argument that does come up. So that's the reason I posted that article, actually, not to really pin anybody down, but to just basically say that argument does come up in terms of the way people in which talk about atheism, or anything for that matter, and, you know, and then, you know, to have that sort of boil down to, well, the best arguments for atheism is only just a facade, is kind of, you know, head spinning. But yeah, so there was that one, and there was a whole bunch of other ones too. Like, I mean, like I said, I keep posting these comments on these articles related to atheism or religion, and I always feel like I should be saying more, but oh yeah, there was basically this what do you call it? This podcast with Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, who's been really famous lately for his whole gender pronoun usage thingy. I've seen him twice or maybe 3 times talking about gender identity and pronoun usage, free speech, and the Human Rights Code in Ontario. And I do completely get what he's saying in terms of freedom of speech. But, and maybe I haven't thought enough about it, but I think there's something I'm missing when it comes to just kind of like everyday kind of decency, and then having it legislated that you have to speak a certain way because someone tells you so. And I do also understand that there's a bit of uncomfortability. Like, I mean, if you started calling some guy, kept referring to some guy as like she, I think the guy would get really offended. I think he would just like automatically, that would maybe, like, I mean, at first it would be kind of like what, but I think eventually it would be kind of like offensive. But different people have different feelings on these things. But I think one of the points Jordan Peterson was making as well was that well, these extra genders, quote unquote extra genders, referring to somebody as Z or Zer or they, legally they can change their minds every 5 minutes, and you would have to adapt to whatever they want you to say to them. Otherwise, face a fine or jail time, or you'd be violating the Human Rights Code in any case. And like I said, I haven't looked into this completely, but I feel like there's a level of commonality here, or common decency, that I think is being betrayed somehow. Like, I find his arguments very, while true, in terms of free speech, there's something about it that's not hitting practicality for me. Do we really expect these people to change these pronouns that quickly? Like, every 5 minutes or every day? Like, I don't know. I have no idea. And in that case, like, if somebody keeps changing their gender pronoun every day, like, wouldn't that not hold up in a case or whatever it is that they have to do? So there's a level of common decency that I feel isn't getting translated into what the Human Rights Code is kind of calling for, and what people are expected to do in everyday situations. I think if somebody asked me to call somebody Zer or Z or whatever, I would be kind of awkward at first. But if that's what they want, and as far as I could remember to call them that, I would, or whatever it is they want to be called, then yeah, for sure. Whatever, whatever. Sure, why not? But but to be put in jail, or like, I don't know. So I do get what he's saying. Point being is, I do get what he's saying. I just don't see where it really meets the ground. But anyway, that's probably me having to think more about that. But I guess the real thing about the show which kind of lasted for 2 hours, was Jordan Peterson's definition of truth and Sam Harris's definition of truth. Jordan Peterson's definition of truth, and I couldn't really listen too carefully to the whole thing because I kept kind of zoning in and out listening to it. It was 2 hours of them just arguing over the definition of what truth is. And I'm sure they're both very smart men, so I'm sure Jordan Peterson, while I don't agree with what he's saying, does have some validity to his argument. I can't find the validity as strong as Sam Harris's definition of what truth is. Truth is, without the frilly stuff about, like, and Jordan Peterson seems to be going on about truth as this sort of very human-centric Darwinian sort of thing, right? Truth can only be true if the application of that truth allows a human being to flourish, or maintain consciousness. But I found myself kind of wondering all the time, what is he talking about? Like, I guess if truth wasn't in anything that you could think of, because it had made you lose your consciousness, then you could say that's not true, but that's awfully Darwinian. And if you lost your consciousness, wouldn't the truth would still be in existence for whatever you lost your consciousness for? Anyway, so it was kind of like a 2 hour sort of back and forth with, like, different examples of what truth is, etc., etc. But what I settled on, and what I think just is in alignment with what I think. I'd say truth is, I think what Sam Harris would have said, is actually just independent of anything we as human beings or animals or whatever, however you define consciousness and who can have morality, etc., without going too deeply into it. Truth is independent of that morality, which kind of reminds me, I kind of need to reread Sam Harris's book, The Moral Landscape, but But I also happen to think, while saying that truth is kind of independent of any sort of Darwinian outcome, I would still also say that life is inherently meaningless. The only meaning that can come from it is anything that is intersubjective or subjective. But I don't know, just more things to think about. But you know, yeah, its truth is just independent of whatever we want to dress it up as. But yeah, and that's about it. That's about it. I can't really think of anything else to talk about. But yeah. There's a couple plays I saw reviews of about being atheist. One of them had like The Atheist basically was interesting, but I don't think it's about atheism. And the other one was Unholy, I think. That one was the first one I just mentioned was in Boston, and the Unholy one is in Toronto. I feel like it's not really about atheism necessarily as much as it's leaving or a contemplation on whether women should stay or leave religion. Anyway, whatever. I think I've talked too much, so I should go. Bye.